First thing, I just want to get a little bit of a history on you.
Okay.
Let's see.
I sent over a bunch of stuff and
Yeah.
I faxed it,
Right.
and I have copies of other stuff.
Okay.
For the fax.
Yeah. What did you write there?
Yeah.
I can't read your writing.
Let me read from your the
Original.
copy or the original. I think I have it. Do you want the original?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was basically listing through using a semicolon, but my feet get cold really easily, and I think that might have something to do with poor circulation. I'm not sure. That happens quite often. I pick my nose. I've always done this since I was young. Makes my nose bleed every now and again. And then in the wintertime, whenever it gets cold, I notice that the veins bust, I guess, so that blood starts coming out more. I have really oily face skin. Skin on my face and my hair. It's really oily. My last physical, which was in 2006, they said slightly high cholesterol.
Okay.
I faint easily, especially whenever I don't eat or blood is taken from me, or I get have blood drawn. Receding hairline, balding, got a bald spot. And then odors, bad breath, foul gas, depending on what I eat, and underarm odor. And then during the wintertime, I notice I'm itching a little more, just in general. Okay. That's what that says.
Okay. And then what, you said you faint when you get blood drawn, or what was the other thing?
Whenever I forget to eat or I don't eat enough or something like that.
Okay. All right. And then sleep. You have trouble getting to sleep, staying asleep?
I have trouble getting to sleep. Not all the time, but most of the time. Or not even most of the time, sometimes.
30% of the time?
Yeah, probably so. 30, 25, 30, yeah.
Okay. Your back? Back pain?
Back pain. Maybe from I'm sitting certain ways, I might.
Nothing ongoing.
Not that I can.
Bad breath you did.
Oh, and that was done a while back. Okay. That's what that is.
Okay. Oh, it's back in June.
Yeah, I had the foot bath.
Like bloating gas, you still get trouble with that?
Every now and again.
Okay.
Nothing
Regular.
Nothing too serious.
And hemorrhoids, rarely?
Yeah, whenever I use the bathroom, I notice that it feels like I haven't gotten everything out, and I think it's just the hemorrhoids that are there. I tried a couple of years ago. I tried. I don't know, they called them rocket something. It was a suppository that you put in your butt overnight, and it was supposed to help it or cure or something. And it didn't do it anything. Okay. Just made me wake up feeling like a mess.
Okay.
Here, let me give you all this. That's the original and then the facts that
Okay.
I sent you.
Okay, good. And then,
I don't know if you want to look at the non-faxed version of it. It might be a little easier to read. But that was a hair analysis my aunt took for me last year. She's a nutritionist. I just never had any sort of interpretation of it because she lived in Atlanta.
Yeah.
She's always busy.
okay. Okay. Well, let me go over.
And then there's also my last physical, which was 2 years ago. The last 2 pages or so.
Blood work.
Yeah, blood work. And then that. And this is the papers they gave me about cholesterol, probably stuff you have already seen.
Probably stuff that I don't believe.
Well, a lot of dietary stuff in here. I don't know if it's that or not.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what we found out.
Okay. Yeah.
Start with the urinalysis, and I'll go over your blood work from 2 years ago and hair analysis.
Okay.
The first part of the urine test lets us know how well you're digesting your food, absorbing your food, and how toxic the liver may or may not be. You're digesting about 80%. That's not too bad. That's probably pushing it. Meaning it's probably less than that on a good day when you're rested, not eating the run, not stressed. So I wouldn't say digestive is a big deal with you. I do think everybody could use enzymes. That's because the cooked foods we eat and stress burns them. So I just think lifelong, even once we're healthy or if we want to prevent, I think everybody should be in enzymes.
Okay.
Liver, not real bad. Here again, to your credit, your age is in your favor, but I've seen a lot worse livers.
Let me also state that the night before this was my wife's birthday. We went out to eat, and I did have a glass of wine. I don't know if that would affect it any. No,
you can't change it that fast.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, but it does need a little spring cleaning. But as I said, we're not extremely toxic. But
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great.
And then as far as water intake, assuming that collection was average, do you have any sense the amount that you collected as a typical 24-hour output?
Yeah, probably so. I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's adequate. I mean, more than adequate.
Okay.
I don't know if you're pushing the water. You don't need to.
All I drink is water,
but I mean, some people just kind of obsess. They think they've got to just drink tons and tons. And
right.
You can actually overdo it and wash out some good stuff, and you're kind of on the edge of that.
Okay.
And also, as you start eating more fresh and raw, I mean, you're already eating a pretty good load, but that's even putting more water in. So
okay.
So if you've got an obsession about it, let it go.
Okay. I thought I wasn't drinking enough. I'm good.
You're almost double it.
Really?
Ideal. Yeah.
Okay. And what would be ideal? Just give me a.
Well, in milliliters, it's 1,600 to 2,000 mLs. You can convert that. I'm not sure what that is, but you can internet convert it right quick.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, about 1,600 to 2,000.
Okay. Okay.
Then the second part of our test was looking at nutrient levels and the things that you were deficient in. First one was calcium, magnesium, and you really talk about those together as your buddies. And calcium, magnesium, there's not a function in the body that they're not either directly or indirectly involved with. So everything is less efficient, and existing problems are even more exaggerated as a result. But we think of calcium, magnesium, we think of muscles and joints, but I mean, you name it, they're somehow involved. And looking at some of your, conditions where calcium might be sort of directly involved would be sleep. Again, that's not a big deal with you, but when you think about sleep, the body doesn't sleep, the brain does. And so that in order for the brain to enact the sleep program, it's got to have plenty of calcium, magnesium. And because you're the number's not real low, it's probably the days you're more stressed, it's going to be the days you're going to struggle with sleep because the stress burned up extra calcium that's not available for the sleep at night. Okay.
Right. And you know what? Now that I think about it, probably why this particular night that I had bad sleep the night before my wife's birthday was I drank a cup of coffee at dinner.
Ooh.
I bet that kept me up like mad.
Right.
So yeah.
And then vitamin C was pretty low, and that's of course everybody thinks immune system, but it's a key player for energy production. We use it for joint health. I think where it's hurting you is you get one of the things we've also learned in our testing here, and also some of the symptoms you listed. You've got some fatigued adrenal glands. And vitamin C, adrenal glands like vitamin C.
And what do the adrenal glands do?
Okay, well, of course everybody knows about them for emergency fight or flight.
Right, adrenaline.
And but in normal physiology, they have a lot to do with metabolism, much like the thyroid does. It's helping our cells sort of fuel in their metabolism. But one of the ways it's hurting you is the adrenal glands in normal physiology tell the heart how much pressure to push the blood out with, not how fast to be, but how much pressure. So when you're lying down, they'll say, heart relax, stand up, sit up, a little more pressure because we've got gravity pulling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you get stressed, the adrenal glands should just kick in a little more and say, heart, you need some more blood, get to the brain and the muscles because we've got some kind of stress. And what happens is your adrenal glands just take a nap.
Mm.
So that's why you faint.
And that's why I faint. Yeah. Okay.
So it's not a heart problem.
Right.
Heart's fine. So
Good.
Not getting the message.
Right.
Okay. So vitamin C is very key for that. And that also has a lot to do with the cold extremities, the cold feet.
Mm-hmm.
The adrenal glands are not telling the heart to get circulation out. And you say it kind of varies. It's not constant. So some days your adrenal glands are more rested. Depends on what happened yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually not the depends how bad the stress is. Here's a good analogy. If you're running a race and your body has what it takes to get you to the finish line, it'll get you there, and then you pay the price.
Mm-hmm.
In other cases, you run out of energy during the race and faint during the race, or pass out. So that's like when you get your blood drawn. You know, there's not enough energy for the adrenals to help you cope with that.
Mm-hmm.
Or in other cases, you might have had a rough day at work yesterday, and today you're paying the price: cold feet, or just feel a little lightheaded.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So vitamin C will help that out, and then we checked the liver for. We did a number of tests on it, but one is specifically for how well is it processing fats. And it's one thing to not eat the fried foods, and we're going to put the good fats in there, but they still have to be converted to a usable form, and that's the liver's job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your liver's got its biggest problem right there. Now that's again fixable as we get it cleaned out.
Mm-hmm.
But that certainly will affect your cholesterol level. The liver is what regulates cholesterol.
Okay.
Well. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Secondly, even if you're eating good fats, but the liver's not converting them, then we don't have enough fats to go around. So the body has to make some decisions. Who's going to get what we do have?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a definite pecking order. Skin is the first to get cut from the budget of most people.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's some kind of imbalance in how the oils are distributed. Like with your face scalp is oily, but the rest of you is not. So you just can't regulate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here again, we're back to liver on that deal.
Okay.
And then the B complex is the last major one. That's really all I focus on is the biggies. And B vitamins have a lot to do with energy production, a lot to do with liver health and how well it functions. And nerves, can affect those in extreme deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at that, and then your blood work, and it's 2 years old, but still a couple things we can pick up on here.
Mm-hmm.
We've already talked about your blood fats, but here we go. One of the measurements here, where they measure the red blood cells, they take about 6 different measurements on the red blood cells, and that's to determine different types of anemia.
Mm-hmm.
And one of your readings was actually a little bit high, and that's a B12 deficiency, which we found in so that's still going. And B12 has a lot to do with energy, but in the long run, it affects our cardiovascular health.
Okay.
in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
We're not worrying right now, but that's not a good combination to have low B12 and high cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only things I saw in the blood work that were an issue.
Okay.
And then on the hair analysis,
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any really toxic, a little bit of arsenic, but it was just barely there.
Mm-hmm.
Your ratios, I mean, you do have some of the normal minerals were a little bit high.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do some comparisons where they kind of put them in ratios and see if, but none of them were out of balance. They're all in acceptable range, so that's good. Let me tell you a little bit about hair analysis.
Okay.
I've done it in years past, used to do quite a bit of it, and I couldn't get some answers, so I just quit doing it. I mean, still look at it. I think where it probably has most values with the toxic minerals, not the other minerals. Here's some of the answers that no one's been able to answer for me. We know the hair is living. But what we don't know is what are we seeing in the hair? Is it current history or is it what happened 3 months ago? Of course, you could take a sample every 3 months and figure that out. Maybe, but so that's, or is it something the body has too much of, or why is that? Why are those minerals there? Is that how they're supposed to be? So there's some areas of I don't feel comfortable basing a whole diagnosis on it.
Right.
And that goes for pretty much any test we do here in the clinic. We try to do a variety of things to overlap.
Right.
And then probably the day that the thing that broke the camel's back with me in hair analysis was I sent in a sample from the same guy from the hair and scalp and pubic.
Mm-hmm.
Got completely different readings, and when I called the company, they didn't have an answer. And I said, "Well, does it have to do with shampoo?" I said, "No, it shouldn't." I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't think it would."
Right.
So I was like, well, "Okay." And it was a reputable company, but still around. This is 15 years ago. So,
right.
So it's not that I say it's of no value. It's one of those things where we know exactly how to interpret it.
Right.
But I do think the toxic minerals, those certainly have value. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and you look real good there.
Good. So, okay. Excellent.
Now, as far as your symptoms, some of them I've already talked about. Let me just go through the rest of them.
Okay.
I talked about cold feet. People whose bruise easily or they have bloody noses easily, that's a vitamin C deficiency. The integrity and the strength of the capillaries and blood vessels is determined largely by vitamin C. Mm-hmm. So if you happen to have some vessels that are capillaries that are pretty close to the surface there in the nose, and then you get in dry weather, that makes them even more closer. Mm-hmm. The mucous membrane is dry up, and if you're in there doing some mechanical irritation, then it doesn't take much,
Right.
So as we get the vitamin C back in, your skin more balanced with the fats, that should really help with that. And then we talked about now hair loss. Sometimes that's a trace mineral problem, or some of the other minerals, and or the fatty acids, which is back to liver again. Mm-hmm. So we'll just have to see as we get down the road, if that's doing better. There is a genetic deal that just can't seem to get around it.
Right.
Okay. So we'll just have to see.
Okay.
And then I talked about the fainting. Now, body odor and halitosis are almost always another reflection of liver. I know there's people who you could say, well, my buddy's got a far more toxic liver, but he doesn't have that problem. Well, he's not getting away with the toxic liver; it's just not showing up in those ways. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those largely genetically determined. Mm-hmm. You can line up 10 people, give them all toxic liver, get 10 different manifestations.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
That probably will get worse as we start detoxing.
Because you're getting rid of it.
I just tell people to, just Oh, parsley's a pretty good natural breath freshener. You can buy dried, the actual licorice, not licorice, clove,
Mm-hmm.
actual clove little spice,
Okay.
and chew on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to do mints because they got sugar. Let's see. And then also, as far as body odor, the cologne, antiperspirants are awful. They've got aluminum chlorhydrate, which basically it's a toxin, so the body closes off the pores to keep it from coming in.
Right. When
Well,
you're supposed to sweat.
yeah, well, some of it's going to get in. So,
Right.
so at the health food store, there's something called a crystal stone.
Mm-hmm.
It works pretty good. And then if you just take regular cologne and just spray it on your shirt, so because that alcohol can burn the skin and be irritating to that, so just spray it on your shirt itself.
Well, one thing that my aunt told me about for the underarm odor is a homemade deodorant that I don't know where she got it from, but it's cornstarch, olive oil, baking soda, and like tea tree oil and lavender oil, and that seemed to work pretty well.
I don't see a problem with that.
So
yeah,
it's just a matter of keeping it to where it stays throughout the day, which it does pretty well with.
Okay.
I will say so.
And then sleep. Now, if you're having trouble going to sleep, just get up and pop a couple of the calcium supplements I'm going to recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Chew them up, and then maybe a glass of juice, get a little glucose in there, and that usually helps you get to sleep.
Okay.
Hemorrhoids are, there's exceptions to this, but most of the time it's due to liver.
Mm-hmm.
All the veins from the lower bowel join together into one big vein called the portal vein.
Okay.
And that goes into the liver. And then once it gets to the liver, it splits down to capillaries again. And then on the other side of the liver, they'll join back up, and it goes back to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, the reason that they go back to capillaries that goes through the liver is we absorb the small intestine. We absorb fats, proteins, well, everything except minerals.
Mm-hmm.
The minerals are absorbed in the large bowel.
Mm-hmm.
So those have to be dropped off to the liver. See, that's our food processing plant. So that's the reason that portal vein goes back to capillaries to distribute the minerals.
Okay.
Now, if the liver gets congested, then the blood doesn't flow through there as efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
So the heart's pumping the blood out at a certain rate, but it's not flowing back at the same rate. So it backs up, and those veins in the lower bowel is where it happens.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And the reason I mention that to you is, yes, eventually the hemorrhoids can go away as you get the liver cleaner, but sometimes during the cleansing process, they'll actually flare up on you because the body's dumping all the stuff from the liver.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of it, please. And I can't handle it all.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't shut the liver down. It just makes it a little less efficient.
Right.
So,
right.
What you can do if that does happen, if you take a regular potato and just cut a piece out of the size suppository and stick it up there and 2 or 3 times a day. It has an astringent that kind of helps them shrink and takes some of the pain away.
Okay.
That doesn't cure it, but at least it's giving some relief.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I first noticed them whenever I was like 14 years old. So it's 12 years ago now. And at first, it was really painful. And I can remember the next day after I figured out what it was, I went to a roller coaster, and it was really painful to sit and whatnot. And
Yeah.
But throughout the years now, it's kind of subsided. Doesn't know pain anymore. It's mainly just whenever I make a bowel movement that I notice they're there, and sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, so I try and stick my finger and push them back up because they're internal, and then I guess they come out.
Yeah, they come out too. They, if you're not having regular bowel movements, that'll tend to exaggerate them because now we've got mechanical pressure on them and irritation.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't have regular bowel function habits, you really need to establish.
What do you?
Well, twice a day at least. Like after. And see, when you eat a meal, that's really what triggers the whole mechanism for bowel movement. So that's the best time to go sit in the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not in the habit of doing that, you can actually train yourself. So just as soon as you eat, like immediately after, but soon go sit and strain and just for just a bit. You don't pop a blood vessel,
Right.
but just kind of encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually train your body. So.
Okay. Well, I definitely notice that after I eat breakfast, I do a bowel movement because I try to eat a high fiber cereal every morning, and that I guess that helps push it along.
Yeah.
But it's only usually that one time during the day. Maybe every now and again I'll do one at night.
Okay. Well, that hopefully will change as you get more fruits and vegetables. But you really the ideal, the old nature path, and I tend to agree, is every time you eat should have a bowel movement.
Mm-hmm. So 3 times a day.
Yeah, ideal. So.
Yeah.
But twice would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes I forget about lunch too, and that's why you see candy bars and all that for lunch.
So there's your originals back on that.
Okay, that's
fine. Now, when it comes to the recommendations, the diet part of the program,
Thank you.
where I can, when there's a family or a couple involved, try to use the same diet just to make life easier for them. And there's really nothing unique about you. If you're diabetic, we'd have to have a different program than your wife. So and then your supplements will be unique with you. I don't usually recommend a supplement for everything we talked about. That's why I look at the test. I go, okay, what are the major issues? The minor issues will be taken care of by virtue of just eating better, assimilate better, digest better. Okay?
Right.
And then the goal is, as we get down the road, start weaning off of those and ultimately end up with a multivitamin and digestive enzyme. That's where we're heading.
Okay. Cool. So what supplements are you going to put me on?
We'll start off with, I got the enzymes and then a deal for your liver.
Okay.
Supplement for that. Then you need some calcium, magnesium. Also, I'm going to do something for adrenal support. We use, they're called metabolic enzymes. There's digestive enzymes and there's enzymes that run our cells. And we can prescribe. They're not drugs. They actually come from cows where we get them. But they're just the enzymes. They're not the protein. They're not the meat. They're not the fat. It's just the enzymes, which are just pure protein. And even though they're from cow, when we take them in, we can target any tissue we want. Kidneys, heart, liver, adrenals. And so that what an enzyme does, it doesn't stimulate and it doesn't replace like a hormone would, but it lubricates. And so when a tissue is sick or overworked, it's at least missing adequate enzymes. And so certainly there's more to health of a cell than just enzymes, but that's a major key player.
Right.
So we do that for a while, and that just kind of gets them up and running and back off of those. So.
Okay. Yeah. As far as diet, what would you like to see? To start with, I guess you could say that might be different from what my wife's doing.
I don't think anything. I'm trying to think I don't think we did anything. I'll give you a diet sheet. And you kind of compare notes with hers.
Okay.
But in theory, you guys should be. We tested her allergies, right?
I don't know if y'all did an allergy test or not yet. I can't remember.
We put it on the computer. That would be the only difference that if we did check her allergies, the foods that we said avoid. But otherwise, it should be the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I wanted to ask you about acne. I don't get it too often, but every now and again, I'll get a big old cyst type thing, or one or two will pop up over here. What causes acne? Where does it come from? And why do I get these big ones?
It's because the skin is being asked to eliminate some toxins that the liver can't deal with, and then what it does, it plugs the pore of the sweat duct, the oil gland. The oil gland keeps making oil, but it can't escape. So it just kind of pools up in there, and then you get bad bacteria move in, stagnant, and the white blood cells move in. That's what pus is.
Okay.
And so when you get them, just kind of analyze, have I gotten off the program, or stress can do it too because stress robs energy from the liver.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to for other reasons as well, get a loofah. You know what that is? And just use that in the shower and scrub. I wouldn't use it in the face, but
We have one of those puff things. Would that be adequate, or should I go get a
a
hard?
loofah is harder.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And that just stimulates the skin to cleanse.
Okay. And so acne doesn't have anything to do with what you eat, or does it?
Well, it does. As I said, it's just the liver. If you're poisoning the liver, then the liver can't filter. So it says, "Skin, can you help me out?" So the skin
okay.
becomes the relief valve. And other people, it might be sinuses. Somebody else might be lungs.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. So it's mainly more about the food you eat taxing your liver, and then that having to give it out to the skin.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
And then here again, in the cleansing, even though hey, I'm eating better, why I'm getting acne? Well, you're cleansing at a rate faster than the liver can handle. So
Right.
it's not a problem. That's just the facts.
Yeah, that's just how it works. And then what about big cystic acne?
Well, it's just more of the same.
More of the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, head up front, and Debbie will have your recommendations out there in just a second.
Okay. Great. Fantastic.